unless they are speaking. Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Wyndham-Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. I'm calling us to order at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. We are in Zoom video conferencing. Mr. Howell?
Kate Briggs.
Here.
Jenny Butler.
Here.
Jenny Cummings.
Here.
Marge Gavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler.
Here.
Anna Keeney.
Here.
Kate Levier.
Here.
Scott McLean.
Here.
Christina Small.
Here.
And Molly Cochran.
Here.
Okay, we have Mike Kelly is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Good.
Go ahead, Mike.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Howell, do you have any adjustments to the agenda?
I muted myself there for a second. And just again, a reminder, if you're coming on, if you could remute yourself, just so that we don't have an echo for this. There aren't any adjustments other than Jenny. There were a couple of updates that were done to the agenda over the course of the last couple of days. One being some reopening update information that I will be giving here in a few minutes, and then also an executive session to discuss negotiations at the conclusion of the meeting. So those two pieces were added at the end.
Thank you. It's now time for public input. I'd like to remind everybody that public input is for items which are not on the agenda. So if you have something that is not on the agenda that you would like to speak about, please raise your hand. Now, we're trying to monitor everybody if they have a hand raised. But if you know how to do a Zoom, go into reactions and it will show you the raise hand feature. So, okay. And again, I remind everybody to mute themselves. Okay. I don't see anyone. I can only see 20, but I don't see anybody so far. Mr. Howell is going to now give us a school reopening update.
Sure. So thank you, Jenny, and thank you to the board for a chance to kind of update the community and talk a little bit about where we are with some of our planning, and just also talk about where we are as far as COVID and RSU 14. And the discussion we're having tonight, there are similar discussions that are going on in every single community across the state of Maine. This is not a topic that's unique to RSU 14, and it's not a topic, honestly, that's unique to even Maine, where some of these conversations are happening in our neighboring states. And I think what's important to remember in all of this as we kind of walk through is that we are still in the midst of a pandemic. Just today, in fact, the community is going to receive another one of my community updates at about 7 o'clock tonight. We have 2 more cases, which are cases 92 and 93. And I think between the 2 cases,
I got it right here, right now.
we have about an additional 35 or so individuals that will be heading into quarantine. So we are in the midst of a pandemic, but we also know that as we're progressing through the pandemic, that we're doing better with things as far as speed of contact tracing. We're doing a little bit better with being able to use some of the tools that we are to be able to keep our quarantine numbers for staff as low as they can. Something else that I pointed out last meeting is that over the course of this pandemic, we have only had to shut down 2 schools, one school for 4 days and another school, Wyndham Middle School, for a single day to do our contact tracing. And so regardless of what moves forward with the community and what moves forward with RSU 14 and what we can offer, those things will still be alive and well. COVID is not left. I can tell you right now that within the adult community within Windham and Raymond, COVID is alive and well. We have a number of adults who are working through cases, and those cases find their way into the schools, and they've had the impact. But so far, schools have proven to be very, very safe. And they've been safe because of all the different things and all the different supports that we put into place and all the different safety measures. And I think one thing that's brought some light for many of us has been the availability for vaccines. And we've been able to see across the communities, now across the state of Maine, where as vaccines have risen, that in some populations now we've started to see a reduction in COVID. And we're also starting to see what amounts to some light at the end of the tunnel. And I think all of us heard the governor, and I think it was 2 weeks ago, that indoor capacities being able to go to 50%, and that's actually this week. And then in May for other indoor capacities being able to go to 75%. In addition, we also know that many outdoor events are going to go to 100%. Which is good news for things like spring sports and other opportunities where things had to be closed down in the midst of a fall. So I think we've been able to better work through what's happening in the pandemic. And also, I just want to give great kudos to our students for their ability to follow all the safety precautions, to be able to wear masks. That has been one reason why transmission rates have stayed low. And then also to our staff who've provided a tremendous amount of flexibility and who have done whatever it is that they can do in order to be able to keep our schools open. So absolutely appreciate that. But I also understand that as we work through and move into the end of the year, that we're also looking at what are additional options, what are some things that we can do in order to be able to provide some additional in-person instruction for our students. Because right now, 98% of our students are in a 2-day, or excuse me, 98% of our students are either experiencing the 4-day remote program or are in a hybrid model. We have a very small population of special ed students that are participating in a 4-day model. And I think we've all yearned for the opportunity to have more kids in the building and to be able to provide more opportunities. And so as case numbers have dropped a little bit, and as we've been able to manage things a little bit better, and with the addition of the vaccine, it's now time to start turning as far as what are options for additional in-person instruction. So I'm going to present a couple opportunities or a couple options to the board tonight. Next week, the board and the public will have every opportunity to ask every single question about what I'm proposing, and the opportunity also to ask some questions as far as what is best for our community at this point, and then what's best on the factors that we're dealing with at this time. So option one would be to have keep our kids in their cohorts, and within those cohorts would be to have them scheduled for alternating Fridays following April vacation. This option would keep our current sizes for classes, for cohorts, and would provide some additional days of instruction for the 2020-2021 school year. There's also a second option, and the second option is entirely dependent upon case numbers continuing to drop, and that we continue to see safety protocols, community safety protocols maintained throughout this process. And the second option would be having groups A and B students, and initially targeting those students who are currently in a hybrid model, having a targeted return date of May 10th for full in-person instruction, combining with the groups. Within that model, we would be looking at whether it be a 5-day or 4.5-day, depending upon the grade level. And to the greatest extent possible, we would have to start, just because of numbers, we would have to start first of all with students that are in a hybrid model, giving first preference to them, and then having, if there's available space, having remote students, because in some of our classrooms, we have some limitations for space. Next week, in the workshop that we would be having, we'll be going over more specific details of what all of this looks like, from everything from the buses to cafeterias and feeding students, and then also looking at some of the other particulars and allowing people to have questions. Now, I know that I'm going to receive a number of questions about why May 10, why that specific date. And it was chosen for a reason. And number one is this, is that while there has been great availability of vaccinations to our staff members, it has been quite a process to get our staff members vaccinated. And I do not anticipate at this point that we will be able to have all of our staff vaccinated until after that first week of May. And why this is important is that, be open, honest, and upfront with the community. We have just been able to keep buildings open because of staff quarantines. There have been days where we were one bus driver short of not being able to run the bus runs, and to be able to have all of our staff members quarantined would allow us, vaccinated would allow us to be able to keep things going. The other reason for the May 10th date is that after every single vacation week that we've experienced in RSU 14, we've seen a rise in cases and we've seen a spike in cases. And it's important for everyone to know that as soon as you start bringing larger groups of individuals in, the number of quarantines starts to increase significantly. And then this also allows for some of those cases to be able to work their way through the system, so it's not impacting, because larger quarantines, more students will be going into remote. And lastly, we have to rewrite all sorts of schedules for all sorts of different students, as well as rerun multiple transportation models. And it is not to the point that we've had the availability of vaccinations that I even feel comfortable heading down this road. So again, two options that we will look at next week within the workshop. Number one being, following vacation, returning to cohort specific Fridays. So A cohort would go on one Friday, B cohort on the other, or the other option would be to look at a targeted return date for May 10 for initially to start all of our hybrid students, and working through remote and other students once we're assured that we can actually meet all of the distancing guidelines with all of the classrooms. So I know there's going to be many questions, and we want to make sure that everyone has the information that they need, and we will definitely give plenty of opportunity at that meeting for those things to happen. So Janie, those are the options at the moment that I see best for us here in RSU 14. And again, in the meantime, while we work through this, we still need to continue to follow all protocols to make sure that not only is our kids safe, but that our communities remain safe.
Thanks, Mr. Howell. I don't, if you have questions, I know we'll, about the process, I know we'll be able, we could answer a couple, but we'd really like you to reserve the time when we can do more in-depth, exactly as the models work out next week at our workshop, which will be open to the public. So Adam Rogers has his hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question for Mr. Howell. Just curious, do you have any feeling at this point for what percentage of vaccination you're looking at? Obviously, you're probably not going to get 100% based on people's personal feelings towards the vaccine and all that sort of stuff. Do you have any sort of feeling for that right now, as far as are we looking at 85% of staff or 90% of staff? And where are we currently at with vaccinations? Just in a percentage, just in a general sort of thing, Obviously not any specifics.
I will just say, first of all, that, I mean, we've not collected percentage of vaccination because it is a personal decision whether or not somebody wants to. Based on multiple conversations with staff members as far as where people are and being able to even get appointments. I know we have individuals who will be scheduling their second round middle to third week of April. And then we all know it's 14 days after that second vaccination where someone is actually fully vaccinated. And we do have staff members that have received Johnson & Johnson, but we have many that are either Pfizer or Moderna with that longer time period. So I guess the answer to the question is to those individuals who want to be vaccinated, because given that is an experimental and that it went through different testing, we cannot require staff members to be vaccinated.
Okay, seeing no, oh, Nicolette? Sorry, Nicolette?
Hello.
Hello?
I have a question for Superintendent Howell. Would we be able to do every other Friday until we get to the May 10th date?
Part of what we need for some Friday, there's a couple things that are going on with Friday. Number one is that we have a number of students who are receiving services that would not free those individuals who are providing the services up for the students who are coming. So it would require a similar rewrite. In addition, we need some of that Friday time to do some planning.
Okay, Megan. I'm sorry, I can't read your name.
Hi, that's okay. Actually, I just had the same question as the last person and I couldn't figure out how to put my hand down. Sorry.
We've all been there. Okay, Kathy Pepin.
Yes, hi. Again, this is for Mr. Howell. Is there any thought or put into, if you can't figure out how to get everybody back, to either have maybe some kind of seniors come back, since this is their last year and they've had no celebration, maybe even just having some time together as a class since they haven't seen each other for a very long time. Is that any option that you're thinking about?
So Kathy, I'll just let you know that when we say students back, it would be any students who are currently in hybrid at Wyndham High School.
Right, that's what I was just saying. Is there any other thought to something, if you couldn't do that, if it would be something special for them at least?
No, in our planning, all the seniors who would want to attend that are, because there would be in hybrid already, they would be able to come in.
Okay. Matt.
Yes, hi Kathy. This one is also for Superintendent Howell. I was just wondering if you guys have any data on transmission at the school itself, not cases in students or staff, but actual transmission between either students or staff at the school itself. Thank you.
Yeah, I will just say, Matt, that we have now worked through 93 cases. And while there is the possibility of maybe a couple cases where there's been transmission, our transmission has come from mostly the community and events that happen in the community. I think what's difficult for us is that something that happens in the community, then it impacts a quarantine that happens at our schools.
Thank you all. Oh, David Moore.
Hi, I just had a quick question. Curious on what plans are for the fall. If we are still in the 3 feet, 6 feet distance requirements, if we have any plans to get the kids back full time still.
Yeah, it's a great question. The plan would be to have as many students back in the fall as possible. And there is a possibility, and of course, this is pure conjecture, and I'm not a doctor, nor do I claim to be one, But I would not be surprised to see even some greater limitations on social distancing, but still having mask wearing. So yes, the plan would be to get everyone possible in for 5 days. But again, it'll be dependent upon where we are and where variants are and where cases are in the fall. But I certainly would love to see every single kid in every classroom here.
Okay, again, if you have more questions, we will be answering these questions. We'll be discussing these questions, and you can certainly bring them forward in a more targeted way next week at the school board meeting next week. So thank you all.
Oops.
Thank
Excuse
you.
me.
You're not unmuted.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I am. I'd like to ask a question. I cannot figure out how to raise my hand on the thing. Sorry. Technology is not my forte. I'm a little curious about sort of the point of having the kids come back for 1 month. It seems to me that it would be quite disruptive to, it's been obviously so much chaos and so much change for them all along. And every time they feel like they're getting used to one thing, and every time the parents get used to one thing, it seems like it changes again. I'm wondering what the school board feels is going to be accomplished with 1 month of in-class. So that's my first question. And my second question, I'm particularly talking about the high school. I don't know how the rest of them do it. But my second question is, you've got your A cohort and your B cohort. And in the high school, they're doing this sort of alternating schedule thing. And if they keep doing that, you're going to end up with some kids getting, it's not going to come out even as far as I can tell. You're going to have some kids who get a lot more in school, or it gets very complicated very quickly. So
Carol, I can quickly just take two parts. Is that one,
Sure.
Personally speaking, and then the board will have a chance to speak for themselves, obviously the next meeting. I think it's important for us to be able to get back so that we can get a successful month that will prep us so that we are fully prepared for a fall reopening. Because we want to make sure that we are fully in person in the fall. As for the high school, I did learn after kind of looking at a date that the next high school rotation change starts on May 10.
Okay.
So kids that would be at that change would all be at the same pace.
And I believe from what I've understood talking to people who are in the know, that means one of the cohorts will be ahead of the other for the last month of school. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that right, but they won't have had the same amount of in-time class. But the point you're saying, Chris, pardon me, is that of getting them back for 1 month now is to prepare them for next year.
I think it's going to be, we will be better as a district having all students in if we can work through this now.
And again, we can discuss it more fully next week. I hope that you will attend next week as well.
What time is it next week?
6:30.
Oh, same. Okay.
Same time.
I think also just to clarify, I think part of the point really
speaking. Oh, is it Michelle Robertson?
Yes.
Okay.
Michelle Robertson. I think also part of the point is that we want our students to really get back to a sense of normalcy. And the fact of the matter is that they are used to going back to school. They are used to having in-person instruction, and they want to return back to that. So any extra instruction that we can give them is valid to their reacclimation into public school the way it was to them and the way it should be. So I think that it's a fantastic idea, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will have some time to debate and discuss further, as I said, next week. So I'm going to cut off comment right now so that we can get on with the rest of our meeting. Thank you all for attending. We really appreciate it. We have a full agenda and we're going to get to that now. So, and again, our workshop meeting is next week when everyone will have a chance to fully explain their sides, and the board will have a chance to comment. The first up is special education with Lisa Garno.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Before I get started, I just have to take just a couple minutes. I know some of my staff are on here, but I really want to just in front of the board and the community, I know that all teachers have worked hard, but I do have a special place in my heart for all of the special education and related service providers in our district, both Windham and Raymond. And I just wanted to take a minute and recognize their extraordinary work and dedication to the students of our two towns since March of 2020. The federal guidelines have not been released due to the pandemic that has been in place. And so they have really worked above and beyond, in my opinion, to make sure that our students' needs have been met, and to make sure that not only their academic, but their emotional needs. So just a personal shout out to all my staff. I really do appreciate all that you have done since March of 2020. And whatever comes out of the school reopening, we got this. We are great at being flexible, so we will figure it out. So that said, I am really excited to finally come before you. This is my 6th year in the district, and this is the first time I've not asked for more money. So we are coming in at which is huge for me, if you guys know me, right? So right now we've spent a lot of time really looking at our current service delivery model and our numbers. And you know, I could be wrong after we get through the recent housing boom, but when I had to plan my budget beginning back in December, our numbers were holding pretty steady. So for planning purposes, we were looking at a special ed count of 531, which compared to 539 of last year. Or excuse me, 517 for 2020 and 539 for 2019. So overall, I think we're, you know, student number wise, we're in the right ballpark for where we have been the last 2 or 3 years. So what we're going to do, or what we're proposing by keeping the staff the same, typically what happens is in the spring, once we have specific enrollment and we have an opportunity to know what student needs are going to be, I personally meet with all of the site coordinators in each of the buildings, and we literally take all of the students with their needs by building, and we determine how many special ed techs we need, how many teachers we need to service those students within that building. So we may need to do a little bit of reshuffling this year in terms of making sure that we are able to meet the needs of each and every building, but we will not have to, those changes should be minimum. Also worth noting is due to the current model of hybrid cohort A and cohort B, and then the number of special ed students or students who receive special ed services who've chosen full remote, we have maintained 12.5 opening, so positions that we intended to hire if all students were in person. And so those positions are still in my budget because we will need them next year. Based on what we know, we have a strong CDS population coming in, or students coming in through CDS from kindergarten. The last count I had was 55 for Windham Primary School and 8 for Raymond Elementary School. So that's pretty steady, as well as where we've been in the past. Some other unknowns, you know, as far as school goes, will just be what our options are. I've heard some parents ask that question in terms of what will fall look like. And there is some discussion at the state level that we might have to offer some remote options for students, because some students have really flourished in their remote option. So those are to be determined. So really thinking about, you know, what are our goals for the department. We want to continue to work with the director of curriculum and the curriculum committee to ensure that students who receive special education services for academic, whether it's reading, writing, or math, are continuing to get the services that they need, so that we can provide a myriad of options and allow us to better provide those student services in a least restrictive environment. As we continue to have a better understanding of the iReady curriculum and the iReady diagnostic, it's really allowing us to see the growth that our students are making. So we will continue to focus on that. We've done some initial deep dives, as you heard Christine Hessler, Director of Curriculum, talk about, and actually I was so proud of the students and so proud of the staff that the majority of special education students have actually made tremendous growth during this pandemic. So we're excited about that. We also know that during this pandemic that students also social and emotional needs have changed. So that's certainly on our forefront as we start to bring students back to school and being able to meet them where they are. In terms of things that have emerged from our work over the last year, we've really learned that we had to sort of rethink how we provided instruction, because in special ed, historically, all of our instruction has been provided face-to-face, typically in small groups or one-on-one, sometimes in a larger regular ed classroom. But most of that, targeted skill instruction was done face-to-face with the student. So we've really expanded our use of technology and how we're able to provide the same exact instruction on a platform, whether it's Google Classroom or another alternative. We've done that. So we're going to be looking to for next year to see how we can work more efficiently and provide that same explicit instruction to students. We're also expanding our use of formative assessments and summative assessments to drive instruction. Staff have been, again, tremendous in keeping that progress monitoring going. So it gives us really clear data points on how our students are faring, not only towards their IEP goals, but in general. In terms of work that we want to look at next year, really a couple of things come to mind. We want to make sure that we're expanding the program options that we're doing in order to provide equity and consistency. So, for an example of that for the public is in the past, we didn't have a self-contained program at Raymond Elementary. And so those students would be bused down to Wyndham Primary School to attend. So a couple of years ago, we started that self-contained classroom down at Raymond Elementary, and it's flourishing. And the good news is some of those students now will be going to Jordan Small. And so we'll be also looking to build a program there similar to Wyndham Middle School to support the needs of our learners in their home district. So that's an example of continuing to provide consistency across the district. And then the other area really relates to professional development for our staff. The areas that we want to continue to work on are the special ed paperwork. As all of you know who know special ed, it's daunting. And so the regs are changing all the time. So wanting to make sure that we keep abreast of that. Also in terms of improving our academic instruction. And again, a huge piece that we anticipate will be the social emotional needs of our student and behavior management as we look to go back to full-size classes. As I shared when I started, our current proposal doesn't include any budget increases. I have the advantage of having the local budget and then the local entitlement budget. And so based on what I know today, with Biden's passing, there may be some additional funding for our local entitlement grant. So stay tuned. So if there are costs, increased costs, I anticipate using that money to cover them. And in terms of any others, I don't have any reductions in my line, but just trying to maintain status quo. So that's really what I had to share with you today. But if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them for you, or attempt or try to.
Marge?
Just one thing, Lisa.
Sure.
On page 38, the white pages, on page 38 of 67.
Okay, hold on. Hold on, I have to look for the package Stacy gave me that matches up with yours.
Maybe if I tell you what the line item is, you'll probably know.
Tell me what the line item is.
Okay, it's the professional technical legal at the high school has a significant jump.
Yep, and so what that is that's my deductible for Drummond and Woodsum. So given that we've had a couple of cases in the past, we reallocated to make it equitable for where those costs are being incurred.
Great, Thank you. And while I'm here, I just want to say thank you so much for how you attack and how you look at and how you treat everybody as equals, and your equity is unbelievable. I mean, it's a tough job. You have ebb and flow constantly, not just year to year, but day to day. So I want to thank you and all your staff.
Thank you. That's very appreciated, Marge. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Gina?
On that same page, we found it. I was wondering what the main state billing fees pay for.
Okay, so that actually covers, so we have, for our special education paperwork software, we use the EDMS. And so for my speech therapist, OT-PT, we actually bring revenue into the district by billing main care for the services that are main care eligible. And so in order to expedite that process and have it be more efficient, I guess, and less work for staff, they type the notes in, and then we work with Maine State Billing to get the reimbursement from main care.
Do you happen to know how much we're getting back in order to offset that?
So we tend to bring in about, I would have to check, Mr. Howell, if you could put that on the list, but off the top of my head, I think we bring in about $40,000 a month.
Okay, thank you.
Rick has her hand up.
My hand won't stay up. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
That's okay.
Anyway, thanks, Lisa, and your staff for all you do. I know you've been incredibly creative during this challenging time. I wonder, I'm looking at the white sheet.
Okay.
And I understand that you have the same number of staff, but when I look at the breakdown, I'm just curious about the shifting. For example, resource room -1. I get the nurse thing, but I don't fully understand the additional ET3s and then the reduction of the resource room.
Yeah, so that's really like a billing code, Kate, if I can explain it. There's like 2100, which represents if that's called regular ed placement. So that's for staff that work with students who are in the regular ed placement, like more than 79% of their day. And then there's resource room for the kids that are there, like 79% to like 40%. And then anybody who's in the special ed, what we would call self-contained, is 2300. And so we just had to reallocate the numbers to reflect where, for the teachers that were teaching, the kids that were on their caseload, were they more in a regular ed or more of a resource room? So it's the same number of staff. We just had to recode them, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and the same thing for the ed tech. So I think you know, because you and I have been in a lot of meetings together, is that since I came on board, we've really tried to hire ed tech 3s versus 2s and 1s, because we have to follow the special ed regs in terms of what their duties are. And the ed tech 3s allow us more flexibility to meet student needs.
Great. If I might follow up with just another question.
Sure.
Regarding the CDS kiddos, in years past, that's always been a wow.
Yes.
Shock, budgetary wise. And I'm surprised with the 55 that we're not
seeing ed techs.
Yeah,
so,
I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and so, you know, that's a little bit of a wild card, I think, at this point, Kate, but I'm just going to speak as honestly as I can. And so typically what would have happened in the past is our staff, primarily Marissa Washburn and staff from Wyndham Primary School, and then Karen McMullen from RES would go and do site visits to CDS and see the kids. But because of CDC, I don't know that we're going to be able to do that. So based on the information we have now, we do have over 16 children that have one-on-ones, and another handful that have two-on-ones. And one of the things that we're learning, I won't go on too long, but the main DOE has now taken over CDS. And so one of the things that we're learning is that in the past, CDS services have been driven by main care billing and private practice. And so many students currently have one-on-ones on their IEPs because of billing, more so than students. And so we're really going to be looking at what are the needs of the student and how does that equate to public school, and how can we provide a similar service, but not based on billing, based on student needs.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other board questions? And I would like to, Lisa, give also my kudos to your staff for the Herculean job that they do, and we really appreciate them. And I am in awe of them.
Yeah. Again, thank you. I just, they are the most resilient group of men and women that I have ever seen in my life. They, even when you think they can't dig deeper, they just shock me, and they are able to do it. So, so we'll take this next, I call it a journey, right? Our journey's continuing, and we'll see how the school year ends. It's a chapter for the ages, right? So it's good. It's good.
I just even this point that however many, whenever there's a change of a minute in our school week, you have to change IEPs.
Correct.
For 500 students.
Yeah.
And that's one of the tasks that's immense, and I appreciate that. And
Thank you.
Recognize it.
I'll make sure that word gets out.
Thanks. Okay, thank you very much. And now we'll move on to Manchester School and Danielle Donini.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
We've come a long way, baby. I guess thinking back and thinking ahead. We're kind of in that planning stage again. As we started the year, just thinking, can we do this for 1 week? It was that level of detail and angst, and at that time we set some goals for ourselves, and our most important and our first goal that remains a theme throughout the year is safety is our first priority, and for staff and for students, and then by implication that helps keep the community safe. We've done an amazing job with that, and like Mr. Howell said, a ton of that goes right to the kids. They're doing a great job. They have done a great job. And we will need them to continue doing a great job if we're able to bring more students in the building. So that was one of our first goals this year. And our second goal was really, while we have the kids, whether it's in person or remote, we're going to use every minute we can to provide the best, most targeted instruction and relationship building that we can. So those were our two goals, and they remain our two goals. How we do it month to month may change because of all the things you know about. But we're really, we've worked really hard. And one thing I'm super proud about is that during this whole time, while we're focusing on safety and being the most engaging and moving kids forward as much as we can with the time that we have, we've also been really focused on our own professional development, which seems like in a year like this could almost be icing on the cake, but we really have kept it as a priority. Our professional development and planning and all our time that we've had staff meetings, the workshop days, our PLC meetings, highly focused on improving our instruction so that we can do even better for the students while we have them with us. I'm so proud of our staff. They've been amazing. And I'm sure we'll have some periods of stress over these next couple of weeks because the unknown, especially for teacher type people, myself included, can make us angsty. But I have no doubt that we will come to a place where we're gonna figure it out together. And I have no doubt that we will keep those two core goals in place: safety and the best learning and relationships that we can possibly have. So I'm hopeful about that. When it comes to the budget, I would just simply say, like Lisa, we the only things that you'll see going up and down in the lines on Manchester's budget are things that we don't really have control over, like postal costs or the fees that we spread across the district based on our per pupil enrollment and things like that. So I have the same positions in there, the same basic services. So if you see lines going up and down, you can ask me about it. It's probably things that we don't control. And I would just say, looking forward to next year, we do appreciate the focus that we've been able to have in the data and the iReady assessments, and we're learning more and more about it, and we're using it every week. We're really encouraging the students to use the personalized pathway so that when they're home, they can be accessing reading and math instruction that's targeted to them. And we're really motivating and championing and celebrating students for engaging with that. And we're looking at the data really carefully. So by the end of the year, we will have a recommendation based on our data for how well that's worked. And we'll use that to plan for next year. So overall, I think given the challenges, we've had a really successful year. We have nothing major to talk about with budget, and we are cautiously optimistic about the opportunity to maybe bring more students back soon.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. And Danielle, again, as always, I've been involved with some of your staff just before we had to stop last year. I please convey to them our appreciation for all that they have done this year, and all that you have done to make your goals, staff and student safety and targeted instruction, to make those goals your continued goals. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let's now move on to, I think it's Mike Kelly, Transportation, and Mike Kelly. Mike, you might be muted. I can't tell if you're actually here anymore because there are too many people still.
I wonder if Mike got kicked off.
Well, Mr. Howell, are you going to check, Mr. Howell?
I will. I'm going to go ahead and I will text Mike and just see if we lost him on his little connection.
He has spotty connection, as I recall. While we're waiting, I would like to take personal privilege and say hi to Elle, who is Eliana, who is here, one of my former students, who is now in 7th grade. Is that correct, Elle? Are you in 7th grade? 8th grade. Holy moly. Well, it's good to have you here.
Oh, he says he's here.
Okay.
I may have texted him, you're on.
Oh, a sound was had.
I think I must have talked too fast.
That's it.
Not on the
Chrissy,
participant list.
Chrissy's on my page too.
He's not, he says he's not on the participant list.
Oh, he just showed up now.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. How you doing? Jesus, it was quick tonight. I'm amazed.
I was just about ready to cut your buses, Mike.
My buses, it's personal.
Chris, I need those buses. Please don't.
No, Lisa, you need vans. So anyways, good evening, everyone. And I say this every year. I think next month will make 13 years with the district. And it's been a long, it's sometimes tough journey, but relatively speaking, it was a fun journey. So anyways, as you can see, the budget for the upcoming fiscal year, the increase is around a little over $234,000. There's really no changes in the account as far as different capital items or anything of that sort. The increases are, generally speaking, about $196,000 of that. It's all dedicated to salaries, insurance, and actually another big piece. We absorbed the maintenance of the building that we're in now, like janitorial services, utilities, and things of that sort. And there's other miscellaneous pieces, such as the some other benefits in some of the smaller accounts. So other than that, there's 3 buses in the budget request because we're getting subsidy on all 3. And I believe there's 2 vans that are being requested too.
Harrison, thank you.
Are we all set?
You're good, Mike.
Okay. So anyways, right now, and I don't think anything's really changed as far as what we deliver for transportation services. I think the most increases that we experience, is, especially Lisa can attest to this, is the special education transportation, because of the different needs. And I think some of the most recent examples are students that are coming from the state and some of those challenges that we're facing. And but we're still, generally speaking, we're running between Raymond and Wyndham 25 runs. I think that's pretty much increased by 1 bus over the last several years, and most recently was because the pre-K program. So I guess I'm open to questions, because there's not a lot there outside of what I just explained.
Pete?
All right, thank you. And I don't know if this is a question directed more towards Mike or Chris. And I know we're going to get the details of the reopening plan next week. I'm very, very curious as to the magic that we're working in order to make the busing work if we do go to a 5-day. But with that being said, if we're still facing distancing restrictions going into the fall, and we want to open 5 days a week to our students, are there going to be any additional busing or driver needs that we should be considering right now?
I'm sorry, I'll defer to Chris right now, because it's, we had this discussion a couple days ago. Let's see what he has to say about it.
Pete, it's a great question, because it's been one of the things that we have struggled with, and some recent recommendations that have come from transportation, which is where the 3-foot social distancing is an absolute requirement in schools. It becomes a recommendation on buses, and it becomes some flexibility if you're running with the windows down, and being able to have more students than the 1 per seat on that bus. For a reopening plan, and I know we're talking about that tonight, and for reopening, we have a significant number of parents right now that are transporting kids that we do need to have that continue. But in the fall, if we still have some distancing requirements, as long as those, still remain as recommendation for buses that you can run with windows down and have more students on the seats, we will be fine with that.
Even if all of the remote students, or a vast majority of the remote students, choose to come back?
There are districts now in the state that are running full buses with windows down, and are still acceptable under the guidelines.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Well, Mike, I want to tell you that we couldn't, as just Pete, indicated, we couldn't have school without the bus drivers and the van drivers and the mechanics. So we want to thank you all for all that you do and appreciate it. And please give that message to them.
All right, thank you, Janie. I really appreciate that. It's been just not us, it's been a struggle across the whole district and other districts too. So we face the challenges, and I think our biggest challenge is staffing. And it's not because we don't have the budget to support staff positions. It's just because of quarantine, people be on different leaves and things of that sort.
And Janny, if I can just kind of jump in for a second, just want to publicly recognize Mike also, because there have been times middle of the day where I've texted him and said, you got to pull some drivers off the road because of quarantine. And Mike has gotten on the phone and worked with some of our sub and our athletic drivers to make even the possibility of getting students home. And I'm appreciative. Also, some of those Sunday evening texts that we've had back and forth to say we may or may not be having school tomorrow. We'll text first thing in the morning to make sure that we have drivers. So he has pulled some magic this year and be able to keep our schools running and to keep people on the road. And again, the reminder, our buses and our vans go the equivalent from here to Houston, Texas every single day. So all sorts of miles with all sorts of drivers and puzzle pieces. And I'm so appreciative, Mike, of what you've done.
Well, thank you, Chris. And just let's put it this way, the calls we've been having, it substitutes for these snow calls and stuff like that. So we didn't have them this year.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Mike.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate everything.
Next is Bill Hanson and facilities. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have your hand raised, Lisa?
Yeah, Jenny, I just wanted to add on to Mike because it made me think when he talked, just so the public is aware. So even though Mike's increases are primarily due to special education and students, the students that he's talking about, we're also working with the Department of Education to work on getting reimbursement for the district. So we have to pay the costs up front, but we have a plan in place to try to bring some revenue in to offset it. Won't offset my budget or Mike's, but I did want you to know we're doing that.
Thanks. Okay, Mr. Hanson.
All right, great. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm going to try to use technology. You see how I make out here. See if it works. Oh, wait a minute.
It's okay, Bill. We're not laughing at you. We're laughing with you.
That's okay.
Bill, are you looking to share your screen?
I am.
Okay, and let me make you a co-host.
Okay. I can do that now. And do this. Hey, come on, presentation. All right, can everyone see the presentation now?
Actually, Bill, you got to go down the bottom and share screen in your Zoom link.
I'll head down.
What?
Christine's on her way. Oh, there it is.
All right, can you see it now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Well, good evening. Bill Hanson, RSU 14 Facilities Director. It's hard to believe it was 2009 when I started this position. I don't know where the time has flown, but it's gone quickly. So I'll go through these slides relatively quickly. A lot of you have seen them before, some of you have not. This first slide here really is important to me. And it's really what we strive to as a department. And I'm not going to tell you we always hit the mark because we miss. But this is our goal, is really to operate and maintain the facilities in a way that we don't impact the educational deliverables that our staff are working on. And that means the rooms are comfortable, they're not noisy, the roof isn't leaking, the sidewalks aren't slippery, all the things that you can think that can impact your day. And our goal is just so our educational staff, and we have an amazing educational staff, can come in, work with the kids and deliver that wonderful education they can each day. And I feel very fortunate the board has afforded me the resources to do that, to deliver on that, because it takes a tremendous amount of resources, both people and financial, to make that happen. So I always like to give you an overview kind of the big picture. Okay, so when I look at buildings, roofs are the most important piece because they're a big part of your building envelope. So you can see there's two areas I've highlighted in yellow. For the most part, we're in pretty good shape. We do have a section in the middle school, which is the core, which is getting tired. I can probably stretch another couple of years out of it, but it's getting tired. It's a built-up roof, which means it's a multiply roof that was put together with liquid tar at the time. It's a different process now. And then if Randy was here online, he would agree with me that the gym storage roof at Jordan Small has been a problem for forever. And it's something we need to work on. So if you look at all the roofs that are listed there, the fact there's only 2 that are an issue, that are on my radar, that's pretty good. We did this past year replace the metal roof at the high school, that bare roof that was leaking so badly, and that's been a very nice upgrade. And probably most people didn't even recognize that it's happened, which is kind of neat. It's kind of a nice project in that it really blended right back in to look as it did previously. The next thing to look at is our mechanical. I mean, our boilers and hot water heaters. Again, real successful year in 2019, upgrading the boilers in the high school and Jordan Small. You can see we've got a few yellow marks there. We've got the middle school. We've got a water heater that's 44 years old. We're limping it along, but it's getting there. And then at the Manchester School, we have 2 boilers that are 48 years old, almost as old as I am. So that's pretty amazing. Now, they were built back in the day when they made really good boilers. Okay, so you know that's again, I look at the sheet. There's not a lot of yellow there. That's the good news. So we have a good roof and we have a good boilers in our building. So that's, to me, that's like having a good strong heart. We're working well. We look at ventilation, heating, air conditioning. You see there's a little more yellow showing up. And I'm happy to say we've made a lot of progress. We continue to make it better, but you know, we've got 12 or 13 units in the middle school. They're Herman Nelson unit ventilators that are in the process of being upgraded right now, but they're not. So they're 43 years old. Field Allen, our baseboard heat is 50 years old. It's still operational. Primary school, we have an air handler that's scheduled to be replaced. That's 32 years old. Manchester, we have an air handler that'll be replaced in the near future. That's 47 years old. And then Jordan Small is the next target, where we have between 1970 to 1987 units that need to stop being replaced. So we got a little work to do here. It's all, the nice thing is over the last 3 years, we've been able to get good preventive maintenance contracts on those equipment. So it's all operational and working as it should, which is good. So I always like to remind everyone we have 3 types of capital investments. So my budget has not only operating expenses, but also capital. So the 3 types of capital we have is we call maintenance improvement projects. And this is cash money we spend each year to do larger repairs or replacements. Then we have capital improvement projects. Those are generally lease purchases. So if we were going to buy a truck, in fact, there's one in the budget for this year, that would be a lease purchase. That would be a CIP expenditure. And the last mechanism we use for funding capital is capital reserve projects. And that is funding that we transfer from year-end fund balance to reserve funds for projects, typically larger projects, but not always, but projects often that we need to fund over several fiscal years. So that's really how the mechanisms that we do project work outside of the operating budget. So then the last piece of my broken record, you've all heard this, and we're looking at a new middle school that is probably going to be in the somewhere between 80 and $100 million, and we'll see where we end up. You can see that we're looking at a replacement value of 200,000. I've just told you your new middle school is going to be 80 to 100. You can see that's a huge capital investment that the RSU has. And as a result, if you look at what we're looking at for replacements, you know, you're looking at a 50-year life cycle, you're looking at $4 million a year in capital replacements outside of the operating budget. So, you know, that's in the perfect world. I think we can do a little better with that. We continue to work hard on our PMs, but you can see it catches up on you quickly. So where are we budget-wise? I wish I could tell you we were flat. That would be great. It would be easy for me. It would be wonderful. But I'm always going to tell the board, I'm going to give you what I think we need to be successful. Because that's really what I feel my job is to do that. So we are up. And if you look at the budget that we have proposed right now, about 144,000 is due to salaries, benefits increases that are anticipated. We do have 2 big chunks of increases for revolving renovation and the COPS grant. That this year we have the first year of the 10-year lease payments for the revolving renovation projects that we're doing. If you all remember that the state is paying for a portion of that project for us, and we're paying a 0% 10-year lease on the balance of it. So that's 154,000 of the increase. And then there's $85,000, which is the local share matching for the COPS grant for all these security improvements that we were awarded. So those are two large portions of the budget increase. And the good news is that we were able to cut nearly $110,000 out of the budget for utilities as a result of taking a closer look at the electricity and the natural gas usage and oil. We've been tracking better. I'm going to tell you this year I've tracked higher because of the additional ventilation we've worked with, but we still feel it's sustainable that we can make that cut. So that's a nice savings. And I think it's probably, Chris, one of the first years in the time I've been here, we've actually reduced utilities, which is wonderful. So that's a good thing. Detailing on the CIP funding year over year, just so you can see where you're at. The CIP funding, which is the lease payments, is up 119,000. You can see that revolving renovation was up 154, which is part of that because it's a lease payment. So it's up less than the total cost of the revolving renovation, but it is up, 2/3 of it. The MIP funding is up as well. Of that increase, 85,000 as a result of the COPS grant. When I look at year over year, the goal that we had was to be somewhere around $600,000 a year in MIP and CIP. And you can see that I'm higher than that right now at 824. You can see that in the bottom of the screen. However, if you take the revolving renovation and the COPS grant out of that, it gets very close to the target of 600 that I was looking for. I think it's sustainable. So the project we had planned in CIP for this year coming up, we have to make payments on the boiler plant at Jordan Small. We are proposing a replacement phone system at the high school. With the high school being our largest campus, it is running a phone system that is no longer supported. And our plan was to put in an IP phone system very similar to we put into primary school and as well as Manchester on that same platform. That's what that lease payment is for. We're still paying the year 2, I guess it'd be probably year 3. I make the mistake on that of the high school boilers. We are asking for a new grounds truck. Our grounds trucks were brand new in 2010, and we've had some real issues with the body and mechanics on them. We're looking to replace one, and then hopefully limp along for a year or 2, and then replace the second one later. Again, revolving renovation, you can see, is in that lease payment for that. The middle school portable, that's the one that's on Field Allen. We're still paying lease payment on that. A portion of that gets reimbursed, I believe, Chris, if I remember correctly. But that goes in, I think, goes back into revenue and doesn't come into my account. There's the replacement of HV 1 and 2 at the primary school that I talked about previously. Those are our 2 probably poorest condition air handlers that we have in the district. And then finally, we have the lease payment on the IP phone system at the primary school that we put in. It'd be year 4 or 4. So that is these are the lease projects that we have in the plan, the current budget for this next year. The MIP, the cash projects have really 2 projects that are really timely and really need to be done, and that's the resurfacing of the track. Those of you who were here, I again believe it was around 2010, we had a track that was failing. We actually put in a urethane track, and they said about every 7 years we'd have to take and do the wear layer is a sprayed on layer that wears. It had to be done. So I may be off on the year exact, but it's time to do that sprayed on wear layer, because if we don't do that, we're gonna start to get to the base urethane. So that's $110,000 to do that. I do have the last phase of my fund at the treatment plant is putting in a chlorine contact tank. This is the last phase of the upgrades, and after that, I think we're going to be good for quite a while. And what this does is it takes the effluent from the clarifier, and it allows a place for the effluent to actually fall over weir any solids that have floated up in the effluent will separate and sink. And that's also where we add the chlorine, so it has the ability to have a contact before it goes out to the river. So that's the benefit of that that project. The COPS grant is shown there.
For sale on deck bushes? You guys probably disgusting.
Thank you.
The high school on tennis court repairs, if you've been down to the high school, we have a corner where we've got a real problem with frost heaves again. And our plan is this summer, we're gonna actually cut the pavement back and we're gonna actually remove the base material, add some drainage to correct that problem, hopefully for once and for all. The copper replacement in Jordan Small, that's an ongoing cost for us, trying to stay up with our carpet replacements. You know, the carpet was put in 2000, so it's getting quite old out there. Primary school network upgrade, that's upgrading the network closets in A and C house. They're really inaccessible right now, and the plan is to address that issue. We are calling for 2 new signs to go on Wyndham Center Road for school flashing signs like we have on 202. Manchester School electrical panel replacement, that's replacing the circuit breakers and internals on the electrical panels at Manchester that are very old and really need to be replaced. And finally, the Wyndham Primary School, that's the $12,000 is again copper replacement, that building. Finally, I still need to work with Chris and then the facilities committee and then the finance committee to recommend to the board what our CRP or capital reserve funding would be. We'll have a better picture of that as we get close to year end. And again, that would require those different bodies to approve whatever I'd recommend. But I am working on that at this point in time. So I think with that, I am done with the things that I wanted you to see. I've gone over a lot in a pretty quick time. And now I'm back. I think I did that correctly. Wow. Maybe I'll learn how to do this someday.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions? Are you raising your hand, Scott? Or are you just gyrating?
Sorry, I can't find the. All right. Bill, I was curious. So we're getting a new middle school. It looks like we are going to need a new middle school roof, middle school boiler, and middle school ventilation before the completion of the new building. Is that correct?
Middle school boilers were fine. The hot water heater is a relatively small expense to deal with. That's something I'm assessing whether or not we can continue to keep that running. The roof that's in the core concerns me. It's a built-up roof, and it really has started to blister and fail. I don't know that we can make it last the 5 years that we need to before that we're able to move our new middle school. I did have Walter Barstow walk our roofs and inspect them, and that's one he has targeted that we need to really think about in the near future replacing. So it's the roof on the classroom wing is shingled, and I plan on continuing to run that as far as we can because we're able to just replace shingles and squares as we need to, and that's relatively easy. But this is it's a lower slope roof, and it's also a little more technical where it's a built-up roof, 3-ply. And once you start getting leaks in that, you really chase them. They're hard to fix.
Okay. So with the roof then, why wouldn't that fall under MIP?
It would fall under MIP. I don't have it listed right now. No, but it would. Okay. I don't have that planned for this year. I may look at putting some money in this year from capital reserve towards that project, because I think it's not an immediate failure, but it's something that we probably have to do before we are able to move into the new middle school.
Okay. And then I guess the last question that I had, at least for right now anyway, is you had mentioned signs on Wyndham Center Road going to the high school, but I'm curious, why wouldn't that be allocated district-wide? I'll
have to check with Stacy on that. that probably we should change that. I'll get back to you on that, Scott, as to why that's high school versus that. Maybe Chris has an answer.
First
but-
thing I think of is Jordan Small and Raymond Elementary, but for the high school to, I don't know. It just seems like it wouldn't go, why wouldn't it go under district wide? So.
Okay. I'll get back to you on that.
Perfect, thank you.
Pete?
All right, to follow up on Scott's question about the middle school, at one point it was mentioned that there was a possibility that the state could come in and say, your new middle school is going to be a revamp of your existing middle school. Are we past that point? Are we pretty confident that any new middle school that the state will fund for us is going to be a different footprint somewhere on the campus?
Well, what I can tell you is that today we received 6 requests for qualifications for our new middle school. That's basically 6 architectural firms are interested in being the chosen one for our new school. No, we haven't selected a site. We haven't gone through the process of renovation versus new. Those are all steps we have to take in the future. And again, I'm not proposing that we fix that roof right now. I think we can limp along. And certainly if the state were to decide that it would be a renovation versus a new school, we may have a different choice. I just wanted you all to be aware that that's a potential problem that's out there. That's the iceberg in the water we're moving towards, and we may be able to navigate around it. We may have to repair it, but I didn't want you to hear down the road that was, all of a sudden there's an issue and you weren't aware. So I will defer it to the point that we can and keep the building safe and dry. And we're keeping a close eye on it, but it is a potential issue.
Anyone else? Again, as I have said to all of the presenters, but I really appreciate, the board really appreciates all the, hard work that your team has done and that you have done to make this school year successful. So please convey our thanks to them.
I certainly will. And again, for the facilities team, all of our staff, I just want to thank the board again for your continued support, both in encouragement but also to the financial resources and the personal resources, because without that support, we couldn't provide the environment that we strive to provide every day for our educational staff. So thank you very much for that help.
Thanks.
And Jenny, if I can just jump in for a second, because I think it's important also for our community to know that when we first were into COVID and everyone was chasing cleaning surfaces and contact on surfaces, Bill was saying this is a air handler issue, and had the foresight and the knowledge to start those projects and to get them planning way off from the very beginning, and was able to secure us equipment and other things for our buildings that if we had waited longer, we actually would have gotten a hold of. And so just want to thank him and his staff for being not only on top of things, but ahead of things and on top of current research, because we've been able to secure things for our buildings that without Bill, we never would have been able, and we'd be in line right now waiting for things to happen. So I'm appreciative of that, and I'm appreciative of the foresight.
Thank you, Chris.
Got lots of thumbs up, so thank you. All right. Now it's time for public comment. If anyone wants to comment on any of these budget items, please raise your hand and let me know. Adam Rogers.
Hi again. So thank you all for the work that you're doing with this. I know it's not any easy task to put together any budget, much less an entire RSU and all the different facets. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. One thing that I kind of wondered about and have wondered about for a few years, and it may be a little bit different where it's an RSU versus a solely owned school district, independent to a town. But I know in other towns, they utilize their public works department for things like snow removal and stuff like that. Obviously, public works is geared for that. And I'm just wondering if there might be some savings that could possibly be seen there. I mean, we're looking at a dump body truck this year that's 10 years old, which 10 years old for dump body that plows is pretty old. 10 years old for dump body that mainly does dirt work isn't quite as old. So I'm just wondering if maybe there might be some savings that we could see. It's probably too late in this budget cycle, but maybe moving forward, could we talk to them a little bit and see if there couldn't be some resource sharing and maybe some cost savings there down the road. And to that point also, with purchasing school buses and vans and stuff like that, I just wonder if we have, and maybe we have, and I'm just not aware, but is there any sort of a state bid? I mean, Portland's buying school buses and Falmouth is buying school buses and everyone's buying school buses. If we sort of collaborated and say, hey, collaboratively, we want 20 school buses instead of we need 5 and they need 4 and whatever, could we get a little bit better costing on that from vendors and stuff like that? Just a few questions I had. Nothing that necessarily needs to be addressed right now, but thank you for the time.
Adam, I can go ahead and address them right now, which is the town of Raymond is currently plowing in Raymond. Even when Wyndham School Department was under the town, I don't believe that the town did the plowing for the campus. It was subcontracted out. So we'd have to go back on the history on that. All of our school buses do go through a state bid process, and the state has approved vendors, which they've already gone through and negotiated a price for us for that. So great thinking. That's something the state does for us as well. And also just to point out that for this year, for the 3 buses that are in the budget, we will receive reimbursements for those buses down the road. We have to put the money up front, but the state will pay us back for those underneath that project.
Thank you. Reggie Dennis.
Yes, I have a question. This is probably going to be directed towards Chris or Lisa Garno. Kind of switching up the topics real quick. We've talked about how students some have fared well and some have struggled, but some have regressed either socially, emotionally, or academically over the past year. And the students who qualify for extended school year, they need that extra attention to either maintain or recuperate, lost ground. And so it's my understanding that extended school year for 2021 has been proposed to stay the same duration as in previous years. And I was wondering that if the administration or the board has considered finding a way to expand that program for this summer to help those students make up for lost ground this past year and prepare themselves for next school year.
I'll just say, Reggie, we are in the midst of planning our summer programming and looking at when ESY dates as well as for regular dates for all students, not just the ESY students. As far as length of time and things, I think those are things that we're still working through the process of. And then also making sure that we can have staffing for all of our summer programs as well. And Lisa, I'm not sure what you have to, if you can add.
Right. Yep. So Reggie, I appreciate your question. We did tentatively poll the special education staff. And as you know, it's best when services can be delivered by staff who are familiar with the students and not having to start over. We have adjusted our ESY dates to move them closer to the start of school. And the primary reason for that is we are trying to work collaboratively within the district to provide both some regular education services and special ed services. So all of that is still in process with the exception of ESY. Based on the information I have at this time, staff need a break. And so if we were to extend it longer, we would need to hire outside of our district in order to do that. So at this time right now, we are just looking at our traditional 5-week ESY program.
Do you know if there, I have a quick follow-up to that, Lisa. Do you know of any grants or anything like that from if it's a budgetary standpoint, looking to hire outside of the district, that we could get some help with that to pull that in for, even if it's a few extra weeks during the summertime?
So Reggie, that's a question. So I can tell you the money's not the issue. And if you want to have specific questions, I probably should do that outside of the school board meeting.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Thank you for your questions. I don't see anyone else for public comment. So I'm going to move on. Kate Levier, could I have a motion for the minutes, please?
Sure can. I move to approve the minutes of the March 17th, 2021 meeting.
Second. It's been moved by Kate, seconded by Jenny. Any public comment on the motion? Any board discussion? All in favor?
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
and Christina Small,
Yes.
and a barking dog.
Okay, committee reports. Any committees want to report? Okay, Mrs. Bricks. You're still mute, Mrs. Bricks.
Like, this is not my first rodeo. Okay. The policy committee met this week and we finalized the immunization update. And we plan to meet with the nurses again on Monday to review the communicable disease policy, which is also cross-referenced in the immunization. We tipped our toe into graduation a bit, and there's more coming on that. We're getting some Drummond and Woodsum information. Lisa's helping out with that, so thank you, Lisa. So more to come on the graduation policy, and that's it.
Okay. Anyone else? I don't see anyone. Okay. It's now time for the superintendent's report.
Great. It's a couple things that I just want to give some quick updates on. First of all, strategic planning. There's a committee that has been working all year long on our strategic plan, and after working through some themes that had appeared across the strategic plan, and then working through what are some goals, some strategies, some action steps, one thing I really like about our strategic planning process is that it, squishy is not a word that I like. And so there's very specific, actionable things that we need to actually kind of check off, do, and working through that process. So the committee this afternoon worked through some of the strategy parts and the action steps, and happy to report that that committee, which I think has been meeting 2 to 3 times a month, will actually have the month of April off. And we will be sending out to staff and to families and to others the opportunity to gain some feedback on those goals and strategies. So some great work that's going on there. I'm excited about what's in the plan and how well that it's connected to that. Also want to share Max Mowat, who is a Katahdin student, and Ryan Roderick have a recipe submitted in the Maine Farm to School Cook-Off. And right now there's an opportunity to vote publicly on that. Something went out via listserv. It's kind of cool where I have my office here because I actually have food service as Christine's across the hall and food service is diagonally. So all the sample things and all the recipes that are trying out make it through this section of the building. And Ryan and Jeannie, who are outstanding resources, and it's just fun when to get to see Ryan, who's our chef, to be able to go in and work with students and work through some recipes as an outstanding asset. So it's also kind of fun down here because we sometimes get to have a little input into the menus. And I think Christine Frost-Bertinet may have a menu item named after her in the very near future. So we've got some good things that are going on. Other things, it was exciting actually to drive after a meeting in the district yesterday out on campus and to see the spring sports kids out on the fields for the first time in March. The fields actually don't have snow on them. I think it was softball team was up on, I don't even know the field numbers, the one by the sewage treatment plant, which is the field hockey, lacrosse, soccer field. They were up there and they were practicing. and to be able to see kids out and about and running, all masked, all doing what they're supposed to be doing to meet safety guidelines. But to see them, and then also to know that we're in the midst of this second season, winter season, and to be able to know that our volleyball players, as well as our unified basketball players, are doing some wonderful things right now and are getting a chance to have that season, and just excited that, you know, the possibility of a spring sports season, because that's the group of students that did not have an athletic season, whereas when the spring was canceled. Couple other things is, as Bill mentioned, we received 6 packets under the request for qualifications for architectural firms. And so we'll have an opportunity to share those packets. The newly minted Wyndham Middle School Building Committee will have their first organizational meeting tomorrow night. And we'll have an opportunity to talk process. And we'll also start to work through how are we going to go about selecting the architectural firm who's going to lead us through this project. And it is going to be a long-term process, but again, super exciting for us, especially having it be a state-funded project and state-supported. For board members, version 5 budget will be coming out first of next week, and have an opportunity to take some of the white pages and some of the summaries and recycle them based upon some of the conversations and changes that we've made as we kind of slowly work through our process. And then I believe tonight is the end of our cost centers. So a chance for all of you to start deliberating to determine what you want to see, what additional questions that you have, ultimately towards approving a budget. And again, to remind the public this year that we will not be holding our traditional raise your hand public meeting in the auditorium this year. That has been suspended by executive order. Instead, we'll have an informational session in the middle of May in preparation for, I believe it's the June 8 or June 9 public referendum on the budget. So things moving on that. Also, I'm anticipating we'll have a few more Zoom members next week, and I will make sure that within the Zoom settings, there's a spot where you can mute on entry, that we can make sure that we put that in so that as people come in, we can make sure that we can go ahead and manage that, because I think this is one of our larger Zoom meetings that we've had. So that is what I have for tonight.
Becca?
Hi, good evening. Good evening, everybody. Sorry, I just got off my other meeting in my other ear. Rebecca Cole, I teach first grade at Wyndham Primary School. I'm the president of Sebago East Shore EA and Maine's director on the NEA Board of Directors. My question is, speaking of the strategic plan, having been involved in a couple of the feedback sessions, I was wondering if, and perhaps this is a premature question, but as an equity educator for the NEA, I was wondering if there has been any consideration for a position within the district specifically dedicated to supporting the continuation of equity work. I know that Christine Frost-Bertinet has been integral, as have other administrators in that, but I am confident that she has many hats to wear and she only has one head. So I'm just wondering if there has been any thought given to that type of a position, or if that is not something that has even been part of the thinking yet.
I'll just say, Becca, it's not been something for this budget. I think it's something that would be of great discussion, especially as we start working into action steps that not only are coming out of the survey that was on the, what was that, March 12th date, but then also as we look at some of the items that are listed in the strategic plan, specifically around equity. I do believe that it warrants further conversation.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to board roundtable. Any board members have something round to share? Seeing none. Marge, could you give me a motion to go into executive session? Please.
Jenny, before we go into the motion, sorry, Marge, I didn't mean to interrupt. But before we go into the motion, I just realized that with the late addition of the executive session, that I need to send the board members a Zoom link for that. So I'm going to drop it in your superintendent's notes.
Okay.
And we will join on that Zoom link. So before everyone just disappears, I will make sure that you knew where to find it.
Thank you. And thank you for all the people that before we Zoom out, thanks to everybody who attended tonight. And we really appreciate your interest and hope to see you next week.
Ready
Okay,
now?
Marge, ready now.
Okay. I move to enter into executive session to discuss RSU 14 contract negotiations with the RSU 14 Board of Directors pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 405 6D and not return to regular meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Marge, seconded by Kate Bricks. All those in, no, any public comment? We don't do public comment on this. Okay, so all those in favor?
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Beck thinks it's a
Jenny
good
Butler.
Yes, and thank you. I was looking for the link.
It was one of those oh my moments. Jenny Klink,
idea. Aye.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
and Christina Small.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.